أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه. رب اشرح لي ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today I want to talk about 3 of the most important relationships you will ever have. When we have to talk about these 3. The most important relationship that you will ever have is your relationship with your Creator, your relationship with God, your relationship with Allah. But the way in which we really get lost and forget who we are is when we forget Allah. So the very first is that if you want to know truly who you are, you need to know who Allah is. And you need to build that relationship with Allah and make it the center and the foundation of all your other relationships. Now, I'm going to just give you some practical ways to do that, because this might be, a concept. How do we do it? I'm going to give you 3 things that you have to commit your life to every single day so that you can keep that foundation strong with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first thing is your salah. Now, I'm sure you guys have been taught your salah since you were young, and it's emphasized here at school. But I want to stand here and I want to tell you why your salah really matters. How many of you have ever said, I don't feel like breathing today? I hope no one's ever said that. Salah is your breathing. Salah is your oxygen. And anyone who is not praying, it's as if they're not breathing. Because salah keeps our heart alive. And we as Muslims are actually privileged because Allah has told us how to stay alive. But you might be like, well, non-Muslims are also alive. They don't pray. What I want you to understand is there is a difference between your body being alive and your soul being alive. And your heart, what is called the qalb, being alive. The Prophet ﷺ said, the difference between the one who remembers Allah and the one who does not remember Allah is like the difference between the living and the dead. So actually, our remembering Allah is what's keeping us alive. And there are people who are walking around, they look like they're alive, but inside they are dead. Their heart is dead. A person who does not pray does not breathe. They're not getting that spiritual oxygen to keep their heart alive. So your salah has to be the first thing that you commit to. I was recently asked about my own journey, because I used to be in a chair just like you. I didn't get the privilege of going to a full-time Islamic school. But one thing that I had to do when I was your age is I committed to my salah. And this was a promise I made between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody else was there when I made this promise. I was alone. And that promise I made probably when I was 13 or 14 years old. And it's that promise that actually changed my life. Because I committed that I would not miss my salah, no matter what. And it wasn't a promise I made to my parents. It wasn't a promise I made to my sisters or my friends. It was a promise I made to Allah. And I did my best to keep that promise. I won't tell you for how many years, because then you'll all know how old I am. But I'm pretty old. And it's been a lot of years since I was 13 or 14. The second part of this prescription that you have to stick to in order to hold on to that relationship with Allah and thereby hold on to your own identity is your commitment to dhikr. What is dhikr? Dhikr is basically the du'as that the Prophet taught us. I know you all have many of them memorized. And by the way, that's a privilege. Many people do not know these du'as. Many people have never even been exposed to these du'as. And I bet many of you have them memorized. The du'as in the morning when you wake up. Asbahna wa asbaha al-mulku lillah. I'm sure you guys say these du'as and have memorized them. If you make this a lifelong commitment, not just in school, But for the rest of your life, to say these du'as in the morning, and then in the evening, and then before you sleep, and throughout your day, practice saying these du'as, because you guys are lucky enough to have them memorized right now. But I will tell you this, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you don't continue this regimen and this constant sort of practice throughout your life, you will lose what you've now memorized. The third thing that you have to do to keep that relationship with Allah is you have to keep a relationship with the Quran. The Quran is what is the healing for what is in your heart. You, throughout your life, you're going to go through different things. You're going to have some difficulties. You're going to have tests. You're going to have different weather and storms in your life. The Quran is what's going to get you through it. Your salah and your dhikr and your Quran together is what's going to get you through it. The second relationship that is of utmost importance in this life is your relationship with others. Now, why is that relationship so important? There is a very important principle that the Prophet, that Allah and His Messenger taught us. And that principle goes like this. Treat other people the way you want Allah to treat you. Now, why do I want to emphasize that, especially at a school? Because it has come to my attention that there is a lot of bullying that happens at school. And why is bullying such a serious problem? Bullying is a serious problem because not only does it cause so much psychological damage to that individual, literally for the rest of their life, but there's another scary reason why it's a problem. And that is that the way I treat other people becomes the way Allah treats me. Think about that deeply. When I am kind to others, Allah will be kind to me. When I am cruel with others, Allah can be cruel with me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment isn't actually cruelty, it's justice. So I have to be very, very careful how I treat other people, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will treat me that way. When I am merciful with other people, when I am forgiving of others, Allah says that He will be forgiving of me. There is a hadith that says that if you do not have mercy with other people, Allah will not have mercy with you. And if you are merciful with other people, Allah will be merciful with you. So something that should really scare us is that if we are mean to others, if we make fun of others, if we put others down, we should be very afraid, because that's how Allah will deal with us. The other thing I want to point out about our relationship with others is the social media world. So you all are being raised in a very unprecedented time. You are being raised in basically a digital world, a world where we live online. When I grew up, it was very different. But now this affects who you are. My advice to you, number one, is realize that what you see online is essentially not real. What you see online is essentially, it's like a false world. It's something that people put up, and it isn't really how they are. It isn't necessarily how they're living. It isn't even necessarily how they look. And so I want you to understand that the online world, a lot of it isn't real. And so you should be careful not to live your life online, but rather to focus on living in this world with the people around you in real life. Because one of the things that's happening with this online world is that we think we're more connected, right? Okay, you can connect with this person and that person and, across the ocean. But what's actually happened is we have become more disconnected with the people close to us. So for example, families are no longer connected because everyone's on their phone. They can be all sitting together in the same room having dinner, and no one's actually talking to each other because they're in front of a screen. And that is something very dangerous, Because our real relationships are not the ones we have online. Our real relationships are the one we have with our family and with the people who are sitting in the same room. So I am advising you, don't fall into that trap. Don't lose what matters for something that's false, something that's fake, something that isn't really real. The other thing I want to point out is be careful about the messages that you're getting online. You're going to be bombarded by a lot through the media. But one of the messages that you're going to be bombarded with is that you aren't good enough the way you are. Especially women are told they need to be prettier, they need to be thinner, maybe they need to be more light-skinned. And boys are also told you got to be strong and you got to make a lot of money or you don't matter. The reality is that your worth is not based on how you look, and it is not based on how much money you make. Your worth is based on your relationship with Allah and how you are with people, how you treat people. Are you kind with people? Are you generous with people? Are you forgiving of people? Because when the Prophet ﷺ said, you know who was the most beloved person to Allah? You might think, oh, it's the person who prays the most in the masjid, or the person who memorized the most Quran. But actually, the Prophet ﷺ said that the most beloved person to Allah is the one who is the most beneficial to other people. In other words, the one who helps others the most, the one who's kindest to others, the one who sees another person in trouble and helps them. Remember how I mentioned bullying? One of the things that Allah and His Messenger love is that when you see something wrong, you take action to try to change it. That you don't just turn away and say, it's not my business. But if you see someone bullying another person, or you see anything that is unjust, that you take action to try to change it. The Prophet ﷺ said that when you see something wrong, you should try to change it with your hand. And if you cannot change it with your hand, that means taking action. Then you should try to change it with your words, with your tongue. And if you cannot, that means to speak out against it. That means to say this isn't right. That means to say, leave him alone. That means to tell an adult that what you saw was wrong. And if that isn't possible, then the Prophet ﷺ said, at least hate it in your heart, that you at least know that this is wrong. And that's the weakest of Iman. So we are told that Allah loves the one who is most helpful to others. They see someone in trouble and they try to help them. They see someone in need and they try to alleviate that need. That's who Allah loves most. And listen to this is really deep. The Prophet ﷺ said that he would rather help another person in need than to be in i'tikaf. I'tikaf means, you know, when you sleep at the masjid for a long period of time in Ramadan, for example. He said he would prefer to help his brother or sister in need than to be in i'tikaf in the masjid of Medina for 1 month. Do you understand what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us? He's teaching us how much Allah loves for us to be good to one another. Because sometimes we think that being religious means, okay, I'm gonna pray at the masjid, I might have a long beard, but I'm very rude with other people, or I'm mean with my family. But the Prophet ﷺ taught us the opposite. He said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. The best of you are the best to their families. So if you want to be good with Allah, be good with people. The other thing about social media and the media in general is it's going to give you a lot of confusing messages. My advice to you is stick to the foundation of the Quran and the Sunnah and don't let go of it. And get your knowledge and your foundation from your home, from your teachers, and don't let the media teach you about right and wrong. Because there's a lot of confusion out there. And right and wrong only come from Allah and His Messenger. They don't come from what's in fashion or what's popular or what social media or any media tells you. Finally, there is the relationship that you have with yourself. Now, this is also a very important relationship. And now I want to link it to the beginning. Allah told us, do not be like those who forgot about Allah, so He made them forget about themselves. How can we have a healthy relationship with ourselves? We have a healthy relationship with ourselves only when we have a healthy relationship with Allah and a healthy relationship with people. Remember, we have to be good with Allah and be good with people so we can be good with ourselves. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I'm going to pause here because I want to be able to take some questions. Oh, great question. So how can we best prepare for the upcoming Ramadan? I'm going to give you a few tips. First of all, first and foremost, we know that Ramadan is the month of the Quran. So my advice to you is to set your intention to create a relationship with the Quran. If you don't already have a close relationship with the Quran, make one. If you already have a relationship with the Quran, which I presume many of you do, having the privilege of being at an Islamic school, deepen your relationship with the Quran. For example, you have memorized passages of the Quran. You've memorized maybe ajza from the Quran. But do you understand what you've memorized? Go back and read what it means. Read the translation and maybe even read the tafsir. That's one of the best ways to utilize Ramadan, is to create a deeper relationship with the Book of Allah. And again, I want to reiterate, you are privileged to have access to the Quran every day in your school and to be able to memorize it. But get deeper with it and read it and understand what it means. So reading the translation. You know, I mentioned to you that in my own personal story, I made a commitment to Salah. But there was a second thing that I did when I was starting high school. And that was I started reading the Quran and then looking at the translation and connecting the words and starting to learn the meaning. And that was really so important in my own development. And I had a little notebook and I would just keep track of the ayat that stood out to me. So this is what I was doing starting when I was 13 or 14. And that is, you know, that's how I started to be able to understand the Quran, is by just doing that word to word, sort of reading slowly through the Quran. The other thing I would advise you to do is to try to use Ramadan as an opportunity to leave any major sins that you're committing. One of the biggest sins that a lot of us, unfortunately, due to the social media and the media culture, the fact that we always have a screen in front of our face, is the sins of the eyes. So looking at things that are inappropriate, I'm sure you understand exactly what I'm saying. That, I will tell you, will ruin your life. It will destroy your life, not only in the akhirah, but in this life. My husband is a counselor, and so many of the problems he has in families and marriages is because of this problem that began at your age, of looking at what is haram, at looking at what is inappropriate. You need to make that commitment now, never to go close to that, because it's poison. It's absolute poison for the eyes, and it's poison that goes to the heart. Guard your eyes and you guard your heart. Make Ramadan an opportunity to really commit to guarding your eyes and never looking at things that are inappropriate. You guys feel me or no? And that's both boys and girls. I think we can take the next question, inshallah. Okay, so strengthening your Islamic identity as teenagers. Follow that 3-part prescription. That 3-part prescription is something we have to do every day and commit to it. What were the 3 parts? I'm going to test you. What were they? What was number 1? I can't hear. Salah, exactly. And you said that Salah. Did she say something different? All right, so salah, all right? And salah is the what of the heart? What is salah to the heart? Oxygen. So number one is salah. This is what keeps your heart alive. That's your breathing. Number two is the du'as or the afkar. And number three, the Quran. That's how you stay committed and build your identity as a teenager all the way till the day you die. All right, so I am going to give you, some of it is a reiteration of the foundation. How do you continue it? I repeat, that 3-part prescription I gave you is how you maintain your identity until the day you die. Every single one of us will go through struggles, different kinds of struggles. But what keeps us alive and afloat is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I will add something that I touched upon, guarding your eyes. Because in university, especially because you guys are, mashallah, somewhat sheltered in an Islamic school. And when you go to university, that shelter is going to be removed. And you're going to be exposed to more. And you're going to have more access. And so it's going to be even more important that you guard your eyes. It's going to be even more important that you guard your heart, to hold on to that identity and that nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I will tell you this, Allah has told us in the Quran a commandment. And this commandment was so important that not only is it in the Quran, Allah specifically addresses men and then specifically addresses women. Typically, a lot of the commandments are just general. But in this commandment, Allah addresses men specifically and then women specifically. And that is the lowering of the gaze, the guarding of the eyes. The ghadd al-basar. Do you guys know what ghadd al-basar means? It doesn't mean, like you're walking around bumping into things because you're looking at the sidewalk. That's not what it means. It means that when there is something inappropriate, you lower your gaze and you don't look at it. You don't stare at something that is wrong. And now that Allah is connected to something else, which is guarding the chastity. In other words, it guards your heart. So for university, that's of utmost importance, is guarding your eyes and also being modest in the way you interact with the opposite gender. Because university, there's no modesty. You might be having some sense of modesty established in this school, but when you get out to university, you're gonna have to have those boundaries. So keeping those boundaries of the eyes and also of the modesty and the way in which you conduct yourself with the opposite gender. Was that clear? Thumbs up? Okay, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullahu khairan. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. Assalamu alaikum. I had an announcement, and I just wanted to make an announcement. So she introduced my book, Reclaim Your Heart, and I have a really exciting announcement. I've just come out with a new book. No one knows this. Very few people know this. Alhamdulillah. Can we make it? Yeah. So I just got permission to make it available to y'all, to you all, inshallah. So it's not available anywhere else in the world. So inshallah will send you that. By the way, it's here. Yes. So emotional. By the way, it's called Healing the Emptiness. So inshallah it will be beneficial.